Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to Velero community meeting. This is today the April 12th. Uh, okay, so for some status update, we 1.11 we have created the first RC release yesterday on April 11th, and we will continue verify the release by for example, by scanning the CVEs and by E2E test, and we may create further RC releases, and then we will be able to make the GA release. And for V1.12, we have started to review the candidates, and for the current candidate list, we can visit this link. And now it's open for the candidate. So if we have any requirements, we can just add the V1.2 dash candidate label to any issues. And currently we have various issues, so we are reviewing that. And the data mover will be the anchor feature for V1.12. This is overall status, and for some individual updates, myself is work continue verifying the data more POC, and I have done some tasks like the to backup some large backup and restore some large disks from various platforms like the public cloud platform, and also some platform like be some local storages. And besides that, I'm reviewing the candidate issues under my name for V1.12. That's it. And Jimmy.
Yeah, I'm mainly working on resource policies, bug fix, and writing user docs and adding A2E test. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And Daniel. Okay. Looks like Daniel is not coming yet. Let's skip. And so Scott, please.
Yeah, so the example plugin for the backup item action and restore item action v2 looks like it does have the two approvals, so we can merge it. There was a comment because that PR moves Golang up to 118 instead of 119. But I think at this point, the thought was we're going to just merge this and then we'll do a separate PR to move 18 to 19. The reason that was 18 there is because this PR actually was created before we moved to 19, and I had to move to 18 just for everything to build properly. So that this was kind of minimum version for the code in here, which is good enough for the example, but we should probably follow up with a later PR to update that to 119 to be consistent with the other repos.
Okay, so I think Daniel means if we want to do this in this PR, we can do this. If not, we can go and merge this PR.
Yeah. His comment was that we can go ahead and merge it. I think the thinking is because we need this for the end test anyway. Let's just merge it and then create a separate PR to move it to 119. Because the 118 really wasn't the point of this PR. The point is to add the backup item action v2.
Yeah.
I had to move it to 118 because it wouldn't build with 117. And that was before we changed everything else to 119. So we should probably follow on with this to change this repo in general to 119, but it's not really essential for this particular functionality.
Okay, then we can do that in the following PR. So if no further comments from everyone else, I think we can merge it.
Yeah, it's got two approvals. So if you want to merge now, we can just merge it now, and I'll create a new PR tomorrow to update Go version to 119.
Okay, I will merge that. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, the other thing is that I am still working on the end-to-end test. I got pulled over into some other stuff, so I didn't make as much progress as I wanted to it. We discussed this last week that if these weren't going to be ready before RC1, then we would just hold off and submit these end-to-end tests post-release. at this point. So I think that's the plan right now.
Okay. Okay. Thanks. Okay. And Xun.
I'm working on some issue fix found in 1.11 release process and still working on adding E2E cases for the new scoped resource filters. And that's all.
Okay. Thanks. And Danfeng.
I'm working on running nightly for V1.11 and scan some CVEs, and also add into in test which is a schedule backup creation test. That's all from me.
Okay. Thanks. And Daniel.
Hey, thanks. Sorry, I'm late. Yeah, I'm currently working on the plan for 1.12, and there are some bugs I opened during the test of V version 1.11, and I'm verifying it post RC1. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, that's for the overall status and the individual updates. And next for the discussion topics. And we have two topics. The first one is from me. It's about the data mover design. And we have reached the RC phase for V1.11. So hopefully we can make all the consensus of this design and merge them before the release of the GA of Web 1.11 so that we can start work for Web 1.12. So right now, I think currently in the we have done some central discussion through some central meeting, and now I think we and in this in the comment for this PR, I think one major question is about it's about this one. This one is about something like we have for we want to modify the current CSI plugin to integrate it with BI v2 and RIA v2. So we may, and also from the design, you can see that there is a generic restore workflow that will not need the volume snapshot to be kept, and also it's a related object like volume snapshot object and the volume snapshot content object to be preserved, like the current CS plugin that we have preserved it opposite it in the backup table. We don't need that. So after some investigation, we see that it will bring some complexity if we still keep that and to go with the current data movement design. So one proposal is like we want to remove it, modify the workflow, like Velero will not take care of this volume snapshot and volume snapshot content object in its backup workflow, and this object will be delivered to the data mover, and it will be take cared by data movers and decide, and its life cycle is decided by the data mover. So it's like data mover has its own, you can decide by itself of whether to delete this objects and how to when to delete that. So and possibly there will be two possibilities for the data mover, and no matter the building data mover and the plugin data mover. It's like if the data mover don't need that, they can just delete the objects after the backup. If they need that, they need to take proceed the objects themselves. So here we just for the without building them or all, for the recommendation, we just recommend that we don't keep that objects.
So what about the
So,
case where you're using the CSI plugin but not data mover?
Okay, so if here we if this is not the data mover, we will not. So this flag is help to judge that. If they not the data mover case, this flag will not be set. So everything will be kept as is
Okay,
as the current plugin.
okay.
Yeah.
So if we're not using data mover, then
Mm.
we create the volume snapshot, we return it as an additional item, and the plugin blocks and waits until it's ready to use. And the only time we don't do that is if data mover is enabled.
Yeah, basically they have two flags, got one enable CSI and one snapshot move data.
Right, that's what I mean. So obviously, if enable CSI is not set, we're not going here at all. But in the case where we're using the CSI plugin, but we're not using the data mover framework, then we create the volume snapshot, we return it as an additional item, and the plugin will wait like now until it's ready to use before it returns, because it won't be an asynchronous plugin. Is that right?
Yeah, actually, the in the current code or workflow, the wait for ready for the CSS snapshot to ready to use is done by Velero, right?
Oh, that's right.
So,
That's right. I'm sorry. I remember seeing that code actually recently. That's right.
no,
So
no, actually, it's better for the plugin do that. So we have created another issue to optimize the workflow of the CSS plugin under the backup item action v2
Yeah.
workflow. So that is possible.
yeah, but if we do that, there is one other consequence, and that is any other action, any other plugin that relies on that being somewhere, we can no longer rely on that being ready to use in the other plugins. Although I guess we're not waiting until the end of processing now, so that's again no change, because even in the current code, we don't wait until it's ready until the end of backup processing.
Yeah, we don't wait that to be ready. Actually, we do that after all the backup.
Right, exactly.
the-
Yeah, that's right before
yeah.
we move to the next phase. Sorry, I forgot that. I mean,
Mm.
I actually was looking at that code last week with Shubham, so I just
Yeah, I think if this flag, I mean, sample data mover flag is not set, everything will be kept, and everything is the same as the current CSS plugin.
Yeah.
Even we want to do some refactor, but that refactor will not affect the behavior.
got
Okay.
it. Understood.
Okay.
So basically, it's only in the case where we're using this new framework, then we don't
Mm.
return it, because at that point, the data mover is responsible for the lifecycle of the volume snapshot.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes
So-
sense.
Okay, so one more thing we want to clarify is about how to use the current data mover workflow and why we don't need the CSS volume snapshot and volume snapshot content object. So this is here I have a list what the plugin data mover need to do to integrate with this current workflow. So for backup. These are normal things like to handle the data upload CRs correctly, and to handle the state machines like the physics and the progress of the DUCR correctly, and to handle, if supported, to handle the cancel requests correctly. These are the normal steps. And the final one is to dispose the volume snapshots as well as their related objects after snapshot data is transferred. So this is as what I have mentioned. The data mover need to take care of the volume snapshot and and their related objects. So that's all for the backup. And for the restore, also the first three are normal operations like handle the DUCRs and the state machines and the cancel requests correctly. And the next one, I think this is also the plugin data mover, a generic operation that the plugin data mover need to, that is to create a PV and then restore the data to it in any way. So here we don't limit how the data is restored to the PV. Actually, that is the expose operation, as we mentioned for the building data mover, right? But we that expose operation is belong to the we only declare how to do that for the built-in data mover. So the plugin data mover could also follow this similar steps, like to expose from the host path or to mount it to a restore pod and do that from inside the pod. But we don't limit that for the plugin data mover. So here we only say that we want to create a PV, and we want the DM or data mover to restore data to the PV. And then the final thing the plugin data mover need to do is that to set the reference for the to the provided PVC. That is, so we have a PVC or that users or Velero expect to bound to this PV. So we set this PV's claim reference to the PVC's name and the reference ID. That is, I think that is a necessary operation and a very simple operation. And finally, set a label to the PV. And with these two steps, the PVC will be able to bound to this PV. That's all for the restore. So I think internally after the discussion, we think that this workflow should work for all the data movers, all the data movers that want to use this workflow. So so here this workflow connects to this requirement actually. This question actually. So if this workflow works for all the data movers, we will not need to keep or preserve the volume snapshot and the volume snapshot content objects. So my question here is whether this workflow is work. Or do we think this workflow works, or this general then the workflow is generic enough that work for all the data movers? And for example, does this work for ADP data movers? Shubham, what's your opinion?
Yeah, so anyways, if we want to plug in our data more, we'll have to make some changes on our side. So like usage of the CRs, data upload and data download. So might as well use the generic restore workflow, right?
Yeah. And it sounds like too, because we're preserving the non-data movement case as a transitional period, you know, once 112 is out, we could probably use our existing data mover outside of this by not setting the data movement and just treating it as totally separate because we're maintaining CSI behavior. And then once we transition to using the framework, then we can, you know, change the way we configure it. So I think that both of those options help for us.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I got that. So it means generally, once it at least this workflow work for the OID data more, once you want to integrate with the current workflow, right? So it's just an option or when to merge into or translate into the current workflow. Okay.
Yeah, so I think that means yes, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we will need to make some changes to correspond to this, but that's all right because it's part of the next release cycle and we'll be working in, you know, at the same time. So we'll be kind of participating with these as they change. So if we need to make any changes on our side before 112 is out, we'll have plenty of time to react to that here.
Okay. So
yeah, I mean, what we want to avoid is the situation that this workflow only works for us. I hope this framework works for, because currently it's only us. The VMware and Red Hat will leverage this workflow. We want to make sure that this workflow, you know, is a
and I think what from what I'm saying and what Shubham is saying, I think that I think it will again. Every change, you know, that we make, even for the baseline, means we might have to make some minor tweaks to correspond to those, and that's fine. But you know, for example, the way the volume snapshots are created and deleted, you know, we may have to make some changes associated with that. But just in general, it does look like, you know, in the base case of we could use the existing data mover without plugging it in as kind of a first step. It'll probably work with minor changes, but then it also looks like longer term, we want to use the plugin framework to actually, make use of the new features as much as possible. And it looks like we should be able to do that.
Yeah, we want to avoid the situation that you stay in the current status forever and
Right,
never
exactly.
move on. Okay, thank you.
And just to double check, we won't be providing Restic as an option for this, right?
Okay.
What's the last comment, Shubham? Sorry.
We won't be providing Restic as a data mover, right? Only Copia.
Oh, yeah. The uploader will be for V1.12 will be copy only. So we will not to integrate with Restic.
Okay.
And in future we may have other data uploaders, other uploaders that is also building data building uploaders. But right now we have only one, and also we can think that is open question. Open question.
Yeah,
like,
because we
in-
have the interface, right? I think
Yeah,
that's
Well, I
something.
mean, with plugin, it might even make sense to transition to where everything's a plugin, even the built-in one. Because I know that's what we did. Like for example, with the CSI, so not CSI, the AWS and all those plugins. Originally, those three object stores were all built in, and then there was a change around, I think 1.0, where those were all pulled into plugins, and so now there is no built-in object store. Everything, even the VMware supported ones are plugins. It might be simpler in the long run to eventually have even the built-in data mover really just be a plugin, so that it would interact with Velero in the same way that like an ODP one would, or some third-party one from Dell or from someone else would. But that's something we can deal with later, I guess. Once we get to the point where we want more than one built in, at that point, it might just make sense to have everything use the same plugin framework.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, by the current design, it is a plugin, but it's not a gRPC plugin as the traditional Velero plugins.
Right.
I think part means pluggable interface. That's it. Not a plugin.
Well, I mean, those are two different things. Like the internal backup item actions, for example, those are not gRPC because they're all in the same Velero pod. But at the same time, in the first version of Velero, the AWS Object Store plugin, for example, was also in Velero Core. And at some point, the then maintainers team, I wasn't a maintainer at the time, but the team made the decision to treat all object stores in the same way. And so the AWS and GCP and Azure plugins were pulled out of Core and became their separate plugin repos as their own containers using gRPC.
I see your point.
I don't know that. Yeah, I don't know that it necessarily makes sense to do this here either. I just, when you're mentioning, or someone was mentioning, we might have multiple, sort of internal data movers. I don't know if that point, if it makes more sense to. And again, I think the question of is it a gRPC plugin with a separate image is a different question from is this part of Velero. And if it's implemented using the same plugin interface, even if it's internal, then it may not matter because the actual, the way you would write a built-in data mover and an external one at that point, if they use the same interface, would be basically the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, please go ahead.
I mean, yes, I see the point what Scott just mentioned, but I think the original question from Shubham is like whether we have the Restic uploader.
Yeah. Right.
So
that was a separate question, and I think part of the reason for that question was, for example, what we're doing on the ODP side is that we're actually using VulSync, which is with Restic as the uploader itself. And since right now for the file system backup, we have the option of Copia Restic, and I guess the main reason I'm guessing why we decided not to do Restic here is because we've already decided that we want to deprecate Restic, for file system backup anyway. So implementing that didn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense compared to Copia there.
Yeah, another reason is because Restic uploader and the Copia uploader are both file system uploader, and we think that is duplicated. So we want to keep one. And since we have decided to separate RESTIC, so we keep a copy only.
Yeah, and I think with current design, you can stick with RESTIC in both things if you want to, because when we're talking about plugin in this pluggable data mover, that's not a gRPC plugin, that's a controller. And you can somehow wrap your code as a controller to handle the data mover CR. And you can continue using RESTIC. Even the internal data mover chooses to use Copia.
Yes, if we
You
see,
just want to make sure there's no misunderstanding about the idea behind the design. So I mean that's unrelated in my opinion. So I just want to make sure Shubham and Scott, you didn't.
But in terms of a data mover plugin that uses this framework, that's not the internal one, that would be a gRPC plugin that we would
that's not a gRPC. That's just a controller.
Okay, but so
data mover plugin would be the modified CSI plugin. That would be a gRPC plugin. The data mover controller would be a different thing. So there are two parts.
Right, but it would be a separate controller running in its own pod, right? It wouldn't be something that would be in the Velero. Although I guess the internal one would be in the Velero pod probably because it's part of the same server. But if for someone else using a pluggable controller, that's not going to be running in the same Velero pod because we're not going to be having users modifying the Velero image.
No, the whole idea is that if user want to use the non-internal data mover, he just install the controller in another pod, but make sure
so you have
that
another pod for the controller,
CR.
and then you would obviously have Velero plugins to create the right CRs, you know.
The plugin will create the CR, but the pluggable controller will have to take care of the CRs. That's
and inside the controller, the data mover controller decides itself how to move the data. So the uploader is inside the data mover controller, and a plugin data mover can select its own uploader.
So the workflow till exposure would be the same, right?
So volume sync. So the wall sync solution is still selectable by the ODB data mover.
We'll just have to drop our usage of CRs and use your CRDs, the data upload and download.
So just want to make sure that before we approve this design, Shubham, there's no misunderstanding regarding what you need to do if you want to leverage this framework, right? So you have went through, you have gone through all this,
Okay, great. So for this question, I think we have discussed all the aspects, and I think there's no major question. So this one is about whether we need we use the existing CSS plugin as a data mover plugin, and we have mentioned we will use that. We will refactor it to integrate with backup action v2, and we also want to do some refactor for the current CSS plugin without the data mover. Also use backup BI v2. That is for it.
I think we're gonna leave this open for around another week or so, and before that, Shubham, just I want to say it again, that make sure there's no misunderstanding, and if we merge it, that's something you also understand what you're gonna do, and you approve it. So we will continue with this approach. Otherwise, we are open for discussion.
Like as of now, I understand the workflow and I see things how we can plug our data mover, but let's see how the implementation goes.
I just want to make sure, avoid the situation that after we merge the design, you figure out this won't work for you and we need to do it over again.
No.
Thank you.
And I think it's not just us as well. We might have different more users as well who want to use this workflow. So keeping that in mind, I think this is pretty good, pretty generic.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, but before we merge it, I will confirm with you guys again via Slack maybe. So just want to make sure this design is you know, makes sense for different I mean the data mover providers, so
Mhm.
that it is pluggable enough. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, thanks everyone. And this is for my topic. And the next one is Shubham. Please.
Yeah, this is something we had a customer ask as well. So as we know, like existing resource policy is already implemented, but with only none and update options, we had kept the delete and recreate options as phase 2 or future scope. So I was wondering, what do you guys think? Should we take this on in the next release? Like, would this be a good candidate?
And Shubham, I just wanted to add to that too. There are actually two things that we put off from the original design when we implemented this. And I guess this RFE is probably not as relevant as the design document that Shubham wrote
Yeah.
more recently than this. I don't know if you have a link to that, but basically there are two things that we did not implement. One was the policy where we had the idea of, you know, do nothing, which is the default. There was an update where we try to update resources, but we never try to recreate them. So if there are immutable fields or immutable resources, then that update will fail. And then there's a delete and recreate option, which was the third thing, which one reason we didn't implement it in the first pass is it's kind of a riskier thing, because if Velero deletes the resource in the cluster and then it fails to recreate it, then we've actually done damage in the cluster. So this would be an option users have to be very careful about. And to follow on with that, the other thing we did not implement here was we have the default policy, which applies to everything, but the original design also had a notion of specifying by resource type. So you could say, you know, the default is update, but for pods, I want to delete and recreate. And for secrets, I don't want to touch them or whatever. So there was a way, there was a section in the design to override the policy on a per resource basis. I think if we do the delete and recreate, we also want to do that, because I think for most users, they're going to want to be very selective about what they are willing to delete and recreate. So I think we should do those two things together rather than just the delete and recreate option.
So you're suggesting put this into 112 candidate, and because that one you're talking about was not on my radar.
Yeah, it's not something when we put this into I think it was 1.9. Shubham, was it 1.9 we put it into?
1.9, yeah.
We these two parts that we're talking about now were kind of said, you know, we agreed that we're not going to implement them in the first design, but they're kind of in the backlog for the future. We had not targeted them for a release, so we didn't say it was going to be in, you know, 1.10 or 1.11. The reason we're mentioning it now is I think it's actually possibly more than one customer we've run into that's, you know, said, hey, you know, in fact, I think in one case, one of the people we were talking to, I think also created it or commented on one of the upstream issues as well here, you know, on the Velero GitHub. But basically, we have other people, you know, noticing that when we restore something that's already in the cluster, we get that warning saying, you know, resource already exists and is different than backed up version. And users are saying, you know, why didn't Velero update that? Why didn't Velero modify, you know, fix it? And obviously, we have that update policy, which works for most cases. But, you know, if it's a pod or if it's something else that we can't modify, then the delete option is really needed.
Okay, so would you mind opening another one issue to? So that seems like an enhancement to the existing resource policy that has already been implemented.
I think that will be better than this RFE, because this RFE was written, you know, a long time ago. It was 2018. And Shubham, if you create a new issue, you can reference your design, because basically what we're doing is we want to implement some additional aspects of an already approved design that we had agreed were going to be out of scope for 1.9.
100%. Okay. I'll do that and tag you guys.
And if we tag that with the the, candidate 112.
Yeah, sure thing.
So since you mentioned this one, are there any other issue or stuff you want to implement in 112? Because currently we are in the process of triaging the 112 candidates. I think we can combine your proposed work items together and try to triage them internally and discuss with you guys. So that's the one for existing policy. Are there any other items?
Hey Wes, do you have anything in mind right now, or we can come back?
Oh, you don't need to answer it right now, but I believe you all have the maintainer permission, so you can create the issue and label it as 112 and ping us on Slack, and we can triage, because we are having some internal discussion to triage them, and later we can gather on the community meeting and hold ad hoc Zoom session to go through them.
Mhm.
And finally, by the end of feature freeze of 112, as previous releases, we have a relatively concrete planned workload. Would that work for you guys? Just in case you can also have some offline discussion internally within Red Hat folks and your customers to see what you want to do in 112.
Yeah, that works fine.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I just have one question. Hey Daniel,
Yeah.
do you guys have any plans for non-admin backups? I had to ask.
For non-admin backup, you mean? But currently, I believe we support running Velero as arbitrary permission, just as long as they can handle this right. They have enough permission to create the resources and do the read or write, calling the APIs, as long as they have the sufficient permission and they are non-admin. I think that's doable.
Okay.
Yeah. I per my understanding for this problem, I think it's all about you use an account to do the read and write for certain resources during the workflow. Whether it's admin or not, it's not really relevant. But normally when you try to write any resources, you need a relatively higher
amount of permission.
high level of permissions, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So whether it's admin or not, that's not really relevant. But normally you need an admin role to do that.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
So I just to labor the point, is there any direction you're seeing from your customers or PMs or whatever to reduce the amount of writes for a non-admin user and still kick off a backup or restore CR, or to solve that in another way?
Sorry, could you repeat your question? I don't think I followed that. Could you say that again? Sorry.
Well, so is the project happy to continue working that way with the elevated permissions required on Velero for a non-admin user, or has there been any discussion on potentially changing that? Does that make sense?
I'm sorry, I'm still a little confused because it's not about being happy or not, because you need to call the API, you need certain permissions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we can work around that, right?
Okay.
So if there's any way to solve that problem, you have any idea, I think I'm happy to discuss. But
yeah, I think we may in the future have some proposals that we'll speak to in a community meeting. I'm not sure if we're really prepared to do that here.
Yeah, so
at the
basically
moment.
you have an open issue, right? Multi-tenancy, design for multi-tenancy support. It's one of the oldest issues.
Yes, if we talk about the multi-tenant, I
Yes,
think
yes, we do. But I recall, I'm not sure is that US or other folks in Red Hat. I mean, Pradeep mentioned that he had some discussion with Red Hat PMs, and you guys think we want to work on multi-tenancy, but there's a long list of work items in the backlog by Pradeep, and Pradeep said he convinced you guys that we can hold a multi-tenancy discussion and work on other stuff. So did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, you're probably correct.
Uh-huh.
Probably that information has changed a bit since.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Again, I'm not sure. I mean, we have some thoughts on various implementations that probably aren't much past just thoughts at this point, to be honest. So we could come back with something more concrete after we probably discuss.
Yeah. And if you think the multi-tenancy is a really high, it's a high priority requirement, make sure Pradeep on the same page, because we have a regular sync with Pradeep, and Pradeep tell us about some results that the discussion happened between him and the different external partners.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe as easy as you can ping him on the Kubernetes Slack, or somehow, just as long as he's on the same page, I think we are happy for the discussion. But as for how to implement, that may require a lot of discussion, especially for the multi-tenancy, because that term seems to be pretty flexible. That means different things for different people. So we want to make sure when we talk about multi-tenancy, we talk about the same thing.
I agree with everything you just said.
Yep.
Okay. Any other topics we want to cover? Okay, if not, I think we can finish off here. And thanks everyone for joining. And have a good day and evening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.